Shifting gears for a minute, I want to talk a little about the Earned Income Tax Credit. And I had some tax preparers in my office recently, and we were talking about just the amount of fraud that goes on in this program. I know you're probably well aware of it. It's pretty stunning numbers that when you look at a program that has had upwards of 25 to 30% of the payments fraudulent. I think reports now are 21 to 25% of the earned income tax payments are fraudulent payments that go to folks that are not entitled or eligible for those benefits. And correct me if you have better, more accurate numbers in a moment here. What tools do you need to fix this problem? You know, we're talking 10 to maybe 13, 14 billion dollars in lost revenue or money that's going out basically from the Federal Treasury to folks that don't deserve those dollars. That's a lot of money, particularly when we're talking about trying to find money for Head Start and cancer research and things that could really help people or reduce the tax burden for Americans that are already struggling in this economy. How do we root out that fraud, number one? And then two, the taxpayer suggested to me that there's a little bit of a loophole in that when they help someone prepare an earned income tax application, they have to certify a list of questions that they're on the line for determining were accurately responded to, or at least that they asked the questions and sought answers. And they've had people, when they've asked the questions, say, never mind, I'm just going to file it myself. That way I don't have to actually answer those questions. And they describe an online loophole that allows people to basically not have to attest to all the same things they might have to attest to with a preparer. What do you know about that? Is that accurate, and what can we do to fix that problem as well?
Right. It is, as I talk with employees, and I tell them that even with our constrained resources, there are a set of things we need to address, and they're what I call the visible issues. So we need to make sure filing season, which is the most visible, goes well, as it has this year, and the challenge for implementing Affordable Care Act and FATCA next year is make sure that it goes well because it ties right directly into the filing season. And so we're going to do that, and I'm committed to that. In terms of other issues, we need to get the C4 issue behind us. We're providing voluminous documents to the 6 investigative groups. It's not a resource issue. It's just, can we ever get the document production completed and somebody issues a report? Because I said, once we have the report, we'll take the facts, whatever they are, do whatever in addition to the things we've already done, and then we'll move on. We need to do that. We need to deal, we have a C3 backlog that requires us, we're redoing the way small PTAs, as I call them, get processed. There's no reason they should get the same 31-page application that somebody's going to spend $2 million with. And those are all visible, and those are things we need to deal with. And I think we have a program, and we're in good shape for that. We have a good story, as I just talked about a huge problem of refund fraud, where we've got programs going. We're making a dent in it. I think we're going to, with a little bit more funding, we'll actually make a bigger dent. The area where the last area that is visible, where I don't think we have had a good story, is in fact the Earned Income Tax Credit. As you know, the improper payment rate has been 20 to 22%, and the amount of money improperly going out is 12 to 14 billion, and it's been that way for several years. And it's not that the IRS hasn't tried a lot of things. They've tried a lot of different things, and it seems to have made no difference. So I have told people that's an untenable position to be in. We need to let people know that we know it's a problem, or we recognize that. We think it's important to solve the problem, and we think that, in fact, there ought to be a way to deal with it. So I've had 2 long meetings with anybody who ever thought about this problem in the IRS to say, okay, don't tell me what we've done. That's fine. It didn't work. We can't keep doing it expecting it to be different. What are the changes we need? And so your question is my question. And there are several things. One is we've disaggregated, where does the improper payment come from? It's not, some of it's fraud by refund preparers who take the money and run off. Some of it's improper payment definitionally. The statute's very complicated about where the children are. There's relatively little fraud in the single taxpayer with no children. The maximum payment there is about $600, so it's not a huge incentive to cheat. And the fraud there is just the understatement of income to try to make yourself qualified, and we have the usual ways of tracking that. The real problem is the complexity around dependents. And how many children do you have, and where are they, and are they with you? Are they with your wife if you're divorced? Are they with somebody's grandmother? How many different people are claiming them? And that's where the attestation comes in, and people have to certify, okay, I've got this many children, and this is where they are. So we spend a lot of time auditing these people, but it's clear we're not going to audit our way out of the problem. We've dealt with tax preparers because over 50%, 57 at one point, over 60% of the returns were filed by preparers. And so they were a group we could educate about the problem, we could ask for their assistance. So if we had correctable error authority, it would be a big step forward. The other thing we're asking for authority on is to move the W-2 filings to the IRS by the end of January. We would collect some of the understatement of income from people. It would allow us to make sure that the fraudulent filers are out of there. The problem is a lot of EITC filers don't have W-2s. They, make money and they file Schedule Cs. They're, gardeners. They're working in assistance places where they don't get W-2s as we go forward. The third piece of it we're looking at is where we can get additional third-party information, particularly about children. We have some of that in our dependent database. We need to make that improved and better. And then the fourth, and we haven't gotten that far yet, is whether there's a way to simplify the statute. Statute, I got to tell you, I've read it, read the requirements, and even I have trouble figuring out what some of the rules are. You can't be filing a return above a certain age if you're already on somebody else's return or you're older than the taxpayer who's filing it. I mean, you look at it and think, now what kind of situation is that? And so I understand how these things grow, but one of the things I've asked for, and we don't have it in our legislative proposal yet, is there a way to make the statute simpler so that people trying to make the right decision and make the right filing would be able to do it without a lot of complications? But I do think it's an important problem, and as I've told our employees, we have to have a better story. And it's not a better story to talk about. We have to have a better story of beginning to make a dent in the improper payment rate and in the amount of money that's being paid out.
If I might just on this topic follow up, Mr. Chairman, that you'll back. Is it accurate that they don't have to, these applicants don't have to attest the same information that they might have to attest through a preparer? Wouldn't that be something we could clean up very easily?
One of the issues, and that's one of the questions, some of these things we can do on our own, some we need legislation for, and one of the questions we're looking at is, everybody's sensitive appropriately to the burden we place on individual taxpayers.
Absolutely.
And so we don't want to gratuitously suddenly make a group of people do more. But on the other hand, my view has been, this is an important program. I remember when it was passed. It supports working poor. It gives people incentives to work. It's a great program, and it turns over. Part of the problem is a third of the eligible people turn over every year. They get a better job, something changes in their circumstances. So we have this irony is we have to be out trying to make sure people eligible sign up. An odd thing for tax collectors to be doing. But back to your point.
Yeah, just on that specific
point. On that point, my view is I'm sensitive to burden. We have to be careful about it. But on the other hand, we can't live with these numbers. And so if it means that it's a little more burdensome to file, and if it means the refund maybe comes a couple weeks later so we can actually process third-party information, we need to take a hard look at doing that.
I just think when a program's got 20, 22, and it's been up to maybe, I've read 25 or 30% over the years in fraud.
It's always been 20. Somehow magically 20 to 22 is the number.
Yeah, well,
not to 30. But,
either way, that's a stunning amount of fraud.
Yes,
and I would think something as simple as you have to attest to certain facts before you're eligible. The same facts you'd have to attest to through a preparer when you fill out your form, to me seems a minimal burden to root out what is essentially a fraud that cheats and hurts every other tax-paying American who isn't cheating the system.
I think we have to look at it. I would simply state that not all of it's fraud. It's improper payments to a lot of extent. It's not necessarily people consciously trying to do it. It's in fact that it is complicated to figure out.
If we simplify the tax code, then we don't need to spend as much money on the IRS.
Back to FATCA for just a moment.
Mr. Womack.
Real quickly, what's the amount of money that the Treasury is losing to